Today's talk is on the Qube. Now, the Qube is a most amazing device that has recently actually been invented and discovered based upon principles of Nikola Tesla's antenna theories and some other theories that were combined to create this most amazing antenna. But it's much more than an antenna. We'll get into that in just a minute. Let's tell the story of how it is that the Qube arose. Some years ago, the author of the Gospel of Sophia asked me to figure out a way to create inside of a classroom for children the best learning environment possible through radionics or through vibrational emanations in the room. So I began to study, being a teacher of many years, and I thought that was such a great idea. I started thinking about my experience when I was in the National Security Agency working with antennas, where I actually helped develop the first collapsed array antennas. And I thought about my experience in radiesthesia, where I've worked with many radionics devices, some of which have antennas that can go supposedly back in time and take pictures, and these things have been demonstrated. I started thinking about a synthesis of all those things, and then I was looking at a friend's device that could project brain waves into the environment, and gamma waves in particular. Because as I had studied brain waves, I had found that gamma waves, once they have started in the brain, create the capacity for the other waves to work at their optimal condition. In volume 2 of the Gospel of Sophia, there is a description of brain waves and the way that they relate to the soul capacities of thinking, feeling, and willing. These also relate to different levels of consciousness. So we realized as we were looking and studying very closely that there were very few ways to create these brain waves that we wanted in the brain, because they were called binaural. The only way that they could be produced is by having frequencies of different natures being put into each ear at the same time, and the difference between those different frequencies was the frequency that you would create. This again is just a discovery in modern science in the last 10 years with brain research. So we kept thinking, how is it that we can project into a room gamma waves so that it would be the optimal condition for learning for children? There was one person who used a Tesla antenna, and he believed that he could, Peter Kelly is his name, a friend of mine in Georgia. He has now passed away, but he developed the first machine that could actually emit these gamma waves to a very small distance. It really wasn't able to project much. And it used antennas, two types of antennas that Tesla had developed. That put us on to the trail of going even further with our research. Then, through looking at some of the research from people who work in a thing called biogeometry, we started to see that there were ways that we could prepare a room so that it would have the ability to stop electromagnetic frequencies that are chaotic coming into the room and bombarding a person. As you know, this is a very big industry nowadays. You can get many, many hundreds of devices that you put on your body or in your house that can stop the electromagnetic frequencies. Some of them say that they can take those frequencies and cohere them, turn them into good frequencies. And this type of research led us further and further and further. Eventually, we finally realized that there was a way to create a scalar wave, much like an orgone energy wave. A scalar wave is a standing wave. It's like a tachyon wave. It's what scientists would call etherons. It's a specific frequency that becomes so pervasive throughout a very large area that once it emits its frequency into that area, it then has a continuum of that energy always present. This type of scalar waves has been used for actually weather manipulation in the last few centuries, last few decades, and particularly in just the last few years, we see more and more use of scalar waves to manipulate weather patterns. So we thought, okay, what if we used a scalar wave? We joined it with the proper frequencies for the brain to stimulate brain function, gamma waves. What if we then added certain vibrational protocols that we have developed through other devices, very sophisticated devices that can emit frequencies of any type, can mimic frequencies, These machines were developed based upon the machines I spoke of before, radionics and radiesthesia, and all the work of the Delaware Laboratory and Ruth Drown and so many others. There are many of these devices out there, but they were always seen as black boxes that shouldn't be shared with anyone because they were able to do diagnosis of illness and then emit some type of frequency or a wave that created health. So we had to figure out a way that we could do this that would be subtle, that would not be seen, that we didn't want it to have to plug into a wall to get electricity. We needed to have an onboard source of energy. We needed to have multiple antennas that worked in 3 different phases so that when the gamma wave was actually emitted by what's called a plate antenna, but a specific type of plate antenna made in a specific shape and to a specific very, very fine manufacturing details in terms of the ratios, the proportions, the mathematics used. The antenna that we've developed, the Qube, of course, is in the shape of a cube, but there are multiple antennas inside and on that Qube that also are able to draw in energy and broadcast energy. But because of its nature, I can just say, without telling you the patent secrets of the Qube, and by the way, as has been said in the article on the Qube, there is only one, and that's because it cost a great deal of money to make this. It took a number of engineers and all kinds of people to make this Qube. But when it was finally made, it had so much power that it actually went far beyond our imagination of what it might do. It not only was able to be programmed with, first off, an onboard source of power, working through multiple antennas that have feedback mechanisms to always be taking in energy, cohering energy, and then emitting energy, but emitting energy that is specifically programmed. Many things, many things were programmed into the Qube. Beautiful geometric forms, all of the type of healing vibrations that you can gain from radiesthesia and from radionics, from neuro-linguistic programming. More things than I can tell you here today. But let's just say that once we found the optimal frequency to create the scalar wave, we found that once the Qube antenna was set in a place for a long enough period of time, it would actually create a standing field. And this standing field became bigger and bigger and bigger and exponentially bigger over time, which was not expected. So we thought, well, why are we just doing this for one room? We thought that there would be one Qube for one room, perhaps for each classroom or in your home, to have a room that you could go in to have optimal thinking, somewhat like a meditation room. Then we started to put together more pieces to the puzzle, and we attached this antenna to an antenna, another type of antenna, and then we attached it to another type of antenna. So there are actually 5 types of antennas involved in the Qube. And the way that the Qube is set up now, it is in a permanent place, and it is emitting the energy and has been for quite some time. And what was the most surprising about it, though in fact the theory should have informed us of this, scalar waves return upon themselves. It's just a matter of time. As you know, any radio wave frequency goes around the Earth. It bounces off the ionospheres, and if it's strong enough, it can literally come back to its source. Some people have recorded even hearing broadcasts from years before that are still echoing in our atmosphere. This is what happened with the Qube, which took us by great surprise when it finally became so coherent that it was pervasive everywhere. This then led us to not make multiple copies of the Qube. It led us to the next step. We looked at the theory of pyramid power that was created by Pat Flanagan, and by seeing what he had done with his energy, which is a very proven source of potential gradient coming off of these devices that he has based upon pyramids, he learned how to take that pyramid as a 3-dimensional shape and flatten it into a 2-dimensional shape so it would have the same energy. And he did this, and he created devices which have been checked through dowsing, radiesthesia, and other such things to be very powerful sources of the same energy as the pyramid. So we started to do research on this, and we started to think, where can we find an antenna that can receive the broadcast of the Qube antenna? We looked everywhere, and we found that in more common sources than anyone can imagine, there is a structure, there was a shape, what we call a sigil, of two interpenetrating spirals with a gap in the middle. Rudolf Steiner himself referred to the gap many, many times in his teachings, and so have other great spiritual scientists. But in this gap, when you look at it, it instantaneously coheres your third eye or your brow chakra. It coheres your energy by bringing it together, and you focus upon nothing. You focus upon the gap. But in that gap, Rudolf Steiner says, is the source of creation out of nothingness. It is a generator. And this has been shown through studies of the ancient past where they had a thing called electrolux. Electrolux was a set of three different metals put in relationship to one another in a specific shape. And this shape was able to emit energy. We now know, because you can buy these patches, you can put them on your clothes, there's so much electromagnetic frequencies chaotically streaming into you that they've actually created jackets of these patches. And the patches are simply, again, what we call sigils. It's a shape, but that shape has usually some type of metal inside of the structure of this shape. It collects energy, coheres that energy, stores it in a battery, and you can use it to run your phone. So when we say that a shape creates energy, that may sound completely absurd, but it is a fact, and it has been known since the ancient times, and it is known in modern times even more because of the new discoveries. As we have tested and researched the Qube and the sigils, we found that certain things happen that are very much akin to the use of ormus. Ormus has been researched quite thoroughly to find that just a few drops on your tongue can actually create gamma waves in your brain within a matter of a couple of minutes and sustain that for as long as 20 minutes. There is also direct current induction into the brain, and they found the two parts of the brain where they can induct current and then receive it on the other side with two diodes. And when this happens, it opens the brain and for a greater capacity for learning, and for 20 minutes, people seem to have this enhanced effect. We wanted to go beyond that. We wanted to have an effect that was permanent, so that it wasn't just a matter of stimulating a specific field in the brain or giving a specific nourishment that you would have to give again and again. We wanted a permanent generator inside of our rooms and our homes, inside of the classrooms, and anywhere else that we wish to set up this atmosphere for higher thinking, meditation, concentration, and the effects of brain waves being enhanced. So what we have seen is it's quite effective. And we thought, how can we share this with people? So when we learned how to project into 2 dimensions, what the Qube does in 3 dimensions, and program what we call on the ourspirit.com site, what we call sigils, and we make those sigils available for you for free, you can take those sigils and they will have the following effect. First off, they will do in a mini version what the Qube does. Secondly, they receive the emanation of the Qube, because the antennas that are in the sigil are in fact tuned to the Qube. There are some of the same mathematics and proportions, the Fibonacci series and other things inside of the sigil are also attuned to the Qube. So anywhere you put a sigil, the energy of the Qube can actually come find that and enhance it. So the sigils are a mini version of the Qube, and it's what we had hoped we could do for people. You can take those and you can put them on your children's notebooks that they take to school. You can put it on a book. You can put it on anything you want. And it will, in fact, stop negative electromagnetic frequency energy. It will cohere that energy and use that energy as a boost. It itself is a generator. It itself is a broadcaster and a receiver. And so that's why the sigils are on the page there, and we wish to offer them to people so that you can use them in any way that you want. Now, as just a side note, as you know, most of the time when something is invented, it's invented usually by a few people in different places in the world, independent of one another, not even having any idea that the other might be working on something similar. When we completed the Qube and had it tested not only by engineers but by people who are expert radiesthesic biogeometric practitioners, it was found to be very, very powerful. And we thought, okay, this principle then should be in effect. Somewhere else, someone should have invented something like this. So we went online. Lo and behold, a few weeks before, Bell Laboratory had released what they said was going to be one of the major innovations and discoveries of our time. It is a Qube antenna. You can look it up on the internet. Bell Laboratories. They say it will replace every single repeater tower for cell phones in the country. That these Qube antennas are so powerful that you never need more than one, no matter how many machines you may be running off of that one single antenna. One Qube antenna can effectively bring in Wi-Fi for literally hundreds of computers. When you look at this Qube antenna, you will find very much a similar approach that was used with our Qube antenna. You will find that it's based upon using plate antennas. It's based upon using geometric solids as antennas. It's based upon collapsed field antenna. Without giving all the details, if you look at their antenna, you can just look at the components. The only thing that they have not done that we did is we built an onboard generator that was bioenergetic, so that it was not using alternating current, direct current, or batteries or any other such thing. So ours is a permanent generator. It will never run out of energy, whereas these Qubes that Bell Laboratory is intending to replace every repeater tower in America with is in fact very, very similar. At the same time, quantum computing now uses a Qube as its spatial referencing for storing memory. All three of these things were invented and actually came to birth within the matter of the same month. So this gave us encouragement that what we did and what we have done and what we are going to continue to do is on the right path. We are the spiritual form. There are other technological forms of doing the same thing, but we believe that we have spiritually found this way to enhance people's environments through brainwave attunement, brainwave electromagnetic frequency coherence, and through emitting many, many, many healing frequencies, heterodyne frequencies through this Qube antenna. Now, another interesting factor to the sigils, anytime you take a true spiritual shape or form, it actually becomes an elemental when it's created. It has a force and a life of its own. So as soon as we started using the sigil, people started taking it and placing it on sacred temples and buildings, on sacred objects. It started to be used in so many different ways that we began to notice that it became more effective and more powerful day by day. This is because the elemental force that is part of that sigil, which has an energy of its own specific frequency, its own specific signature, is an entity unto itself that will continue to multiply and continue to grow as people use it more and more throughout the world. So we hope that as people do this, that they will remember to put it anywhere that they think might be a good place to bring this energy, or anywhere that there's good energy that this antenna would receive into itself and bring back to you and every other person that's using this sigil. So these type of things are kind of the side effects of what we arrived at through our research without really knowing how far it was going to go. But now we're very, very pleased, and we just wish we could make Qubes for you, but it's practically impossible. So we were so thrilled when we were able to figure out a way that we could share this with everyone in their home, and basically with practically every sacred object you have, and or any object you wish to make sacred. So we wish you the best of luck working with them, and please let us know what you find in terms of your experimentation.